Welcome back to the Sales Synopsis with Mark Jewell of Selling Energy and myself, the average lighting sales scrub, Greg Ehrich. This episode is brought to you by TCP Lighting. Visit tcpi.com. Always innovative and in the business to make salespeople's lives easier. Now, one item that seems minor when making a sale, but turns major when installing the lighting is Kelvin temperature. I've run into it so many times in the past. But you never have to worry about Kelvin temp when it comes to TCP because they have it all, including a new color selectable LED tube in both Type A, ballast compatible, and Type B, ballast bypass, single or double end. So visit tcpi.com. Mark, the sales
Yep.
landscape and lighting, in my opinion, has changed, right? So
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
this is my opinion here, but I feel there was a hot 5-year run of everyone doing everything when LEDs kicked off. And relationships to some degree seem to kind of take a back seat. Again, my opinion. I know that other people might feel that way, but it seemed like people are just doing everything low price, not thinking about relationships as much. But
hmm
in the last year or two, I've felt that the tide is starting to turn and relationships are starting to come back and matter maybe more than ever. And I
hmm
find myself looking at my customers that I have or have had in the past, and I search for more opportunity. I look at what more can I do with them. And then listening to the seminar you put together, it was generating more leads than you need, which I'm about halfway through, which is great.
there you go.
But you discussed the idea of spider mapping your customers. Now, what does that process entail?
You know, it's funny, Greg. First of all, I agree with you. Let me just qualify by saying that a lot of people think that successful selling is a result of relationships, and I really believe that relationships are the result of successful selling. I think there are a lot of people giving away free TVs and duck hunting trips and things like that, and they assume that they're going to get the business. But essentially, if the customer feels as if their career is at risk if your lighting retrofit goes awry, the fact that you took them duck hunting in Alabama is not going to let them use you. They're going to go to a more reliable supplier. But assuming that you have a good bevy of customers, and you know, another analogy you've heard me use on these selling in six lessons is squeezing the olive more than once. And I think that so many people in our business leave money on the table. Most people do not do a complete lighting retrofit at the front. They
Right.
either they only do certain portions. You've seen this, right, Greg? I mean,
Mhm.
people say, "Well, I just want to do the common areas." It's like, dude,
Nope.
it's a commercial real estate business. I mean, the lobbies, the elevator lobbies, the hallways, and the parking lot are about 15% of the lights. And when in the old days when I was in the lighting retrofit business, I would press people say, "What about the rest of the tenant square footage?" And they would give me some line about, well, you have to preserve the peaceful occupancy to, disturb, past the tenant's line. So you get into these buildings that are like June Lockhart, Lost in Space, where the lobbies are just phenomenal. And then you walk over the tenant threshold, and it's like 1970s lighting. Exaggerating, but you get the point. So you've got these people that do portions of their building, they phase it in, which is a mistake. So, yeah, you ask yourself, the first spider mapping leg is let's get into the rest of that building. Okay.
Yep.
The second is, well, let's ask this person if they have any other buildings, because most people have, most of these portfolios you're working with, they're multi-building portfolios. So what about the other buildings? If you're in an owner-occupied situation, what about the affiliates, sister companies? And then you say, well, okay, I already talked to my internal champion. They don't have any other buildings. They just have their manufacturing plant. Okay, well, think of all the other people who interact with that manufacturing plant, the customers of that manufacturing plant. Who do they sell their stuff to? And in fact, a real spin that a lot of people don't think about is what about all the trucks that are pulling up to that loading dock, giving them supplies to make into their products? And I
Mhm.
call that the supply chain customers who actually give, or the supply chain partners who actually gives them the boxes that they put their goods in before. And what we're looking for here is ways to drop a name. So if you've just done a retrofit on the 600,000 square foot factory, and you pick up the phone and you call the box manufacturer that sells them boxes, and you could drop the name of that factory saying, hey, we just did the lighting retrofit, we reduced the lighting energy by 40%, and the foot candle levels, the lighting levels came up by 20%. Now they're having a lot less errors. And Jody over there thought that I might want to talk with you because you might benefit from the same thing. Boom, you're in. It's a
Yeah.
very hot lead. Have you done that in your career? Greg, have you had the opportunity to go like down the chain, up and down the chain to the customers and back to the supply chain partners?
Yeah, and I think again, kind of with that time frame, I've noticed that 5-year run where it's just everything going, and then you don't have enough time sometimes, to look more into it. And I've done that more recently, and I did on a project that I completed last year, smaller building, but then you dive into, okay, well, where does the invoice go to? Well, it goes to this address. Well, what's that address? It's a huge company. They own you,
Right.
okay? And then what else do they have? Well, they
Exactly.
have 50 of these locations that I just retrofitted in Minnesota around the country. Who do I
Right.
talk to? The
Boom.
same guy that's in Minnesota. I'm like, perfect. So now I've sold 10 of them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. It's really funny. It's like, wait a second. If you look back at the guy who signed the check for the first retrofit, he probably has the ability to sign the check for 27 other retrofits, but
Yes.
nobody ever asked him to. And the
Yes.
other 26 facility managers are asleep at the wheel. They're just worried about their day-to-day crazy. Yeah, Mishigas, as they say in Yiddish. Not
Yep.
that I'm Jewish, but I had a lot of Yiddish mentors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
I,
I usually give people a list of 4 or 5 people. So first, most obvious, look for other buildings with the same company. Then you look for
yep.
sister companies or affiliates. Then you look for customers. Then you look for the supply chain partners, and then you look for neighbors. Now, a lot of lighting retrofit salespeople do this naturally. They say, "Well, I just did a job at this industrial park. I'm going to walk up and down the street in the industrial park and see who else I could just drop a name." And that's probably the most obvious spider mapping that most people are doing.
Yep.
In residential, you have door hangers. You put solar on one house, then you put door knockers, door hangers on the rest of the 100 houses within the vicinity, and say, "This is what we did for your neighbor." Another wild one is competitors. Now,
Mm.
I'm nervous to use the word competitors because people, tighten their sphincter when they hear the word competitor, like, "Oh, my competitor's working with you." But if you
Yep.
say peers, that sort of softens the blow. So if you and a very successful company we worked with to train, this must have been 10 years ago, they had a software tool that was on an iPad, and they were doing small business direct install. So if they did dry cleaners, lighting retrofits, for example, they would have a pin dot on the map for every dry cleaner they did within a 10-mile radius. And they would hold that up to the dry cleaner and say, "Look, 52 of your peers already did this lighting retrofit." It was phenomenal. And you and I actually interacted recently. Didn't you do something
Yeah.
very similar with churches? Tell
We did. Yeah.
maybe you should tell the audience about that. How did that work out?
Yeah. So we looked back at all the church accounts that we've worked with, and for whatever reason, we started doing church business a while ago, and we did quite a few projects. And when you actually counted up in the Minneapolis metro area, we found that we had 198 churches that we did. And I'm like,
Wow.
that's a big chunk
Wow.
in a smallish area. And
Of
so
course.
obviously we've seen a lot in churches and we've been able to do a lot. And now we're using that as promotion and sales that we can get after more.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a facility director or the monsignor at a church, and someone tells you you've done 192 other churches, holy
Hmm.
cow, pun intended.
Yeah.
uh, that's a lot of previous business.
Yeah.
When we were working with Xcel Energy in Minneapolis and Twin Cities, we did 110 office buildings. Every building that we could find that was over 100,000 square feet that was an office building, we did for the utility. It was a
Hmm.
retrofit and retrocommissioning audit. And when you walk into the 89th building and you say, "Well, what are you doing here?" "Well, we just did 88 of your peers here in the Twin Cities." Holy cow! Did you do this?
Yeah.
Did you go with Bill over at ABC Corp? "Oh yeah, we did that building 2 months ago." "Okay,
Yep.
come on in." It's amazing to me how many people in this business whine about a lack of leads, even forgetting for the moment that LinkedIn has 600 million people on it.
Right.
10% of the world's population and probably 50% of all the business people in the world, in the entire planet, are on LinkedIn. If you can't find a lead on LinkedIn by dropping a name of somebody else you've worked with, maybe you shouldn't be in the business. Maybe you should be in sales.
Yeah.
There's just so much connectivity these days. When I started 40 years ago, people used to buy lists that came on these sheets of labels, and you peel the labels off and stick them on an index card, put them in a Rubbermaid recipe card box, and that was your lead database.
Right.
And high tech
Changed
was
a little.
color coding the. Right, it's changed a little,
Yeah.
right? The Rubbermaid recipe
Yep.
box is given back to grandma to put her pie recipes in, and everybody else is on a CRM if they're smart enough to use it. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
And I
Yeah.
find even with new customers, you can do this. Like with the existing, for sure, it makes total sense. Like you've got a relationship. But even on the new ones, and I've started to look at that and I said, okay, I found one the other day and I was like, oh, this is a new one I'm trying to get into. And I looked at it and I'm like, go down the whole spider webbing. And I actually found out that
Yeah.
they're affiliated with a company that I did already work with. So now how much easier is
Right.
that to get in?
Exactly. I'll give you something even more provocative, and that is that I tell people you should ask for referrals from prospects who haven't done business with you. People say, "Are you crazy? They haven't done business with you." I say, "Listen, there are plenty of reasons why a customer or prospect may not do business with you. They say you have to have the need, the desire, the authority, and the ability to do business. Well, maybe they have the need. maybe you've convinced them that they have the need and they have the desire to do it, but maybe they have the authority, but they just don't have the money in the budget. But they do love you and they love your product. They would do it if they had the money. Or maybe they have the money, but they don't have the authority. And so they're an excellent source of leads. They're a way that you could spider map from a platform you haven't even sold yet. And
Yep.
interestingly enough, I've seen it where the person refers you to somebody else. They do it. They have a great experience with you, and then that makes it even more a rabid enthusiasm for them to do it when they actually do get the money, because now they've got their friend who was the guinea pig unknowingly. They referred you to somebody else. They did it first, and now you come back. I mean, I think it's a mixture of cleverness and chutzpah. I'm really all about the Yiddish this morning, but it's basically all about just having the gumption to be creative and to be really seeking to create value for people. And if you have that vibe, people will say, you know what, you're a good guy. We spent 2-3 hours for this. I'm disappointed. My manager's boss's boss's boss said we didn't have the money this fiscal year, but you know what? I got a guy. Call this guy. He has the same problem I have, and he's better. He's better off financially. They had a better year. Boom, you got a sale just because you were creative enough to say, hey, now that you know a lot about us, is there anybody else in your circle of family, friends, or colleagues who might enjoy the same benefit, who may be in a better position to do it now? That's a nice, easy way. It's human. And people in this COVID world are used to helping people. Say, you know what? I got a guy here. Call this guy. You do that, you're going to make a lot more business than if you don't, I think.
I'm with you. You heard it here, guys. Spider map your customers, new, existing. Get more leads, because more leads equals more sales, and more sales equals more money. That's what we're all trying to get here. So get after it. Yeah, this has been the Sales Synopsis with Mark Jewell of Selling Energy, Greg Ehrich, and we're brought to you by TCP. All the Kelvin temperatures covered, color selectable LED tubes. Check them out.